Hey everybody, it's Tim and Steve from Phantom History House. Welcome to Phantom History House Call. All right, so it's Tim and Steve from Phantom History House. Phantom History House Calls, our live show that's now weekly. Watch for us usually on Wednesdays. Tonight we're live on a Thursday.
Yes, we have to accommodate our schedules every once in a while. So we shifted a little bit. So Wednesdays or Thursdays, we're going to see how this goes. And of course, we always invite interesting people who are in the paranormal horror realm of the world of what we do to talk a little bit about what they do. And we're really fortunate that we get to ask them the questions and learn as you learn along with us. So we're really excited about this program we've kind of put together.
Yeah, tonight we're talking about how do you know what's weird? How do you know if something's weird?
Yeah, I feel like I have very good weirdar, if that's a word. But what does weird mean in the context of what our guest is talking about?
And our guest is an authority on the weird. Joshua Ginsberg is an author. Here's one of his books, the Secret Tampa. I can't say it.
Secret Tampa Bay.
I'm too excited. And we are actually in this latest edition. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Josh is going to be right with us in just a moment. And you have the other one.
Yes, Oldest Tampa Bay.
So, and there's tons more. There's new books about Orlando, weird places and stuff. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. Before we do, we want to let you know, if you're watching, thanks for watching.
Absolutely.
Halloween. Wow, man.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. It's always Halloween here, everybody. Valentine's Day is coming up. So come bring your special someone and have a romantic getaway here.
Yeah, it's been surprising. We've learned a lot of, when people come here, they say, oh, your house is really cool. We really like the decor. It's nice and eerie, but it's also romantic. And I think it's the flickering candles that people love.
Oh, they do. They really love the castle room, especially. Everybody says it's always very romantic.
Yeah.
We have some bookings already for the weekend after Valentine's. We'd love to have some the weekend before as well. So hope you'll come join us for that. The weekend after that, Tiffany Fitzpatrick's going to be here.
Yeah, she will be back again for the third time. It'll be her third visit to Phantom History House. Tiffany is, of course, our friend from Indianapolis who is an eclectic witch. She will be here doing our readings on the 17th, which is on a Saturday. But she's also doing a special event on Friday the 16th, which is something we've never done here before.
Right. It's sort of like a special version of a seance. She's calling it eclectic healing. I'm not doing this right. I should have planned it.
Healing and dimensional weaving.
Yeah, but anyway, it's basically individualized healing in a group setting. Yeah. So sort of like a seance where the psychic medium will sort of have some message or information for different people that are sitting around the room. This is the same kind of thing, but it's more about individualized healing. And the readings are more about money and love, which we all want more love and more money in our lives. So I hope that you'll check that out while she's here on the 17th as well.
And that's perfect for Valentine's Day. And then later this month, we are going to be traveling up to Dunellen to take part in the Spirits Row Psychic Fair at the historic Dunellen train depot, which I hear is very haunted. So I'm very excited. So we're actually going to have a booth there along with a bunch of paranormal investigators, people selling crystals, psychics, mediums, tarot card readers, all of that. I think it's like $5 to get in. And then, of course, you can, find who you want to do your reading or whomever. And we'll be there talking about the ghost tours by the fire, bed and breakfast, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so come see us if you're up in that area at all. What was the date again?
It is on February 24th, which is a Saturday.
Yeah, so we're being out and about, everybody, because the next week.
Yes, on March 2nd, we are super excited about this one too. We are going to have a space at the Tampa Bay version of the World of Oddities, which is also called WOE, W-O-E. It's their first time in Tampa. They're going to be at the Tampa Convention Center, and we are going to be right in the middle of it with our own booth, with our own presentation, with our own flyers to give out, to kind of spread the word about all the stuff we're doing here at Phantom History House and hopefully make some really great connections while we're there too.
Right. So the Tampa version of the World Oddities Expo, and we are going to be there. So come check out all the weird. There's tattooing going on. There's all kinds of vendors
and performance artists, taxidermy.
Yeah, it's going to be a day. It's going to be a day when we're going to be there in the middle of it. So we hope that you will come to that event and come see us and support us. Okay. So enough about all that. We need to get Josh in here. Joshua Ginsberg, the author of Secret Tampa Bay, which is the book that we're a part of, everybody. Yes. So let's bring him in now and start this conversation. Say, Joshua, how are you?
Good evening. It's great to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, we love having you and I love having you here. We're thrilled that we got a chance to meet you last year when you came by the house and we gave you the tour and you're like, oh, I want to include you in this book that I think it's the second edition of Secret Tampa Bay, right?
That's correct. Yep, the second printing. And, as things kind of age out from time to time, I get the opportunity to replace them with exciting, weird, wonderful, and obscure new things like the Fandom History House.
Well, we love being included in the weird and cool. I mean,
Yeah.
we're cool enough to be in your book. We really feel like we made it. So thank you so much for including us.
Yeah, every time we have a guest, we always show them that page. We're like, oh, look, we're in a book. It's kind of like you should be studied. You're not in a book, but it's more of a compliment. So to stick with, kind of what our theme is of this conversation, before we talk about a lot of the work that you've done and how you got in this, what qualifies something to be weird? Like, what did we check off on the weird list in order to be included? What does that take?
Well, and again, everybody's opinion is going to be different. I mean, I don't think there's one right answer to what makes something weird, wonderful, or obscure. To me, the things that excite me the most to write about are things that I have never seen or heard written about anywhere else. That means it's either something that's new or something that's just such a deep dive that unless you're sort of a local or someone who's lived in or around the area for a long time, it wouldn't be something you knew about. But when I started, I was looking to sort of discover the hidden face of the place I was living, which before Tampa was Chicago.
Right.
And so I had made a list of things you can only do in that one place on earth. And some were very touristy, like, having a hot dog. Definitely don't put any ketchup on that at Wrigley Field. But then some things were very obscure, like finding, tunnels and things that the city had basically built up over. And what used to become ground level streets had become these like lost subterranean passageways. So, but it was the idea of finding a list that shows what this one unique place is. So that was kind of how I started seeking the weird and obscure.
And what I love about that is that every city has its like underbelly, that a lot of people don't know about because there's already been so much history. I mean, every time I do a podcast episode of Fandom History, it's always like, America is so young. We don't really respect the history like some of the European countries do or have that history. But there's still a lot like around us that we don't know. And Tampa is a great example of that. I mean, I've read through your book and there was stuff in there that I didn't know about. And I've lived here for 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So a nice surprise, which I loved. And I want to go through and like have a list to visit all these places.
Excellent. And that's my hope. And, there's, as we mentioned, right, there's so many different categories of weird that I wanted to write something that would speak to someone no matter what sort of thing they were interested in. So I had to actually at one point for a presentation that I gave a while back for USF, they were kind enough to have me in. And I came up with some different categories, right? So, I mean, on one hand, there's like architectural oddities, stuff like urbex and what I think of as modern ruins. There's things that are Americana or even more specifically, Floridiana. There's curious goods and artifacts, fascinating sort of personalities like John Ringling, for example, who lived just south of us. Myths and urban legends, inventions and innovations and scientific advancements, little known and hidden and secret histories, and then what I call a taste for the strange, which is food and beverage. There's natural wonders, there's unusual collections and weirdly specific museums, monuments, markers, and artwork. And then the last category is the one that, where I think there's a lot of overlap in our interests, which is spooky, supernatural, and unexplained phenomenon. So those were just some of the categories that I had thought of.
Okay, so we're talking with author Joshua Ginsburg about what makes something weird. Of course, he is great at finding these weird things out. So we sort of fit in. Our bed and breakfast is in your latest edition of Secret Tampa Bay. So we were sort of like a one of a kind place, right? That was sort of what set us apart.
Yeah, I mean, I can promise you there is nothing like what you are doing in Oldsmar, Florida.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
We're really in the Tampa Bay area. I mean, there are a lot of hotels that are sort of allegedly, haunted or have ghost stories connected to them. But I don't think any of them have kind of capitalized on that and made that sort of the theme or the focus. And, that to me, at least, is something that really spoke to me because I just think that that's fascinating and fun. And like I said, I don't think I've seen anything like it in the area.
Well, and that's, of course, what we were going for when we started Phantom History House. We wanted to be unique and stand out. And as people are finding us, we're getting a lot of that feedback, which has been really, really great. And I like that you said you have all these categories of what weird it can be. But it's probably an ever-changing list as well, because there's a lot of really creative people out there who are either urban exploring and finding stuff, or creative people who are building stuff, kind of like what we did, that you can kind of add to, your third, fourth, fifth, sixth edition of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, as I often tell people, right, if you want to make a second act for yourself out of writing about strange and unusual things, moving to Florida is a lot like hitting the jackpot, because you are just not going to run out of topics.
So here's a question I have for you. Like, when we're doing stuff for the house, I feel like we kind of each decide if that's sort of creepy. And one of the things we tell people is when we were decorating the house, we'd be out in antique stores or malls or something, and then we'd be like, "Ooh, that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. We better take that home," right? Like, that's sort of creeping me out. So I sort of assumed that, though, what's weird would be very in the eye of the beholder as well. Now, you sort of said that there are categories, and okay, this is something I've never seen before. But I also, don't you think that a lot of people are like, well, I think that's weird, but you might not think it's weird.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, for me in particular, I guess it's almost a challenge of what I'm trying to do here is that it's like, in the same way that somebody who smells all sorts of things can sort of go nose blind. I have to make sure I'm not going like weird blind, right? Because
that makes perfect sense.
After you've like been to the Independent International Showman's Museum, which is all sort of like circus sideshow stuff, and then you go to a manatee viewing center, and then you go to a place where the Creature from the Black Lagoon was filmed, and it's like at some point this starts to become the normal cadence of my life, and it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that, like, things that may no longer be weird for me are still very weird for most people.
I mean, that's the definition of weird, is, something that's unfamiliar, and the more familiar it is to you, it's not weird anymore. So I can appreciate that challenge.
Now, thankfully, my wife has a very, very different perspective, and having her perspective helps for exactly that reason. So, a lot of times we'll be going somewhere in the middle of Florida, and I'll say, hey, I want to check out this antique shop that has this allegedly, cursed object or something. And she'll be like, all right, well, I'll be down the street at the boutique, So we have some places where our interests converge and some where they don't. But I know one thing she would say about determining what's weird is, if you find me there, you're probably on the right path.
Well, you're exactly right. And there's, again, this definition of weird changes for everybody. And we just had a light go out on us. So that's why I'm sitting in the dark now. And Tim's trying to get that to work. So that's where he disappeared to. But on the haunted side of stuff, I mean, again, if you've never experienced a ghost or some kind of haunting, of course it's going to be weird to you. But if you're a paranormal investigator, hauntings are absolutely normal and it's something you run into all the time, which made me want to lead into what you're working on now, or have just recently published, is you've done a whole haunted book on Orlando.
That's correct. So my fifth book, I don't have a publication date yet. The text of the book is with Arcadia, the History Press. And I need to go back to Orlando around the end of this month and just try to finish off a few of the last photos. But Haunted Orlando will be coming out this year. And boy, it was a lot of fun to write. You know, things have been happening sort of very organically for me. And it's, you know, my whole journey has been very unexpected, but one thing has been sort of constantly leading to the next. And this one was just an absolute blast, and people were so welcoming and willing to sort of share stories of things that had happened to them at their place of work or at this hotel or, you know, whatever it was.
Well, and you know, I love that because of course that's what I do too. You know, I love collecting ghost stories. And once somebody finds out that you're comfortable with ghost stories and you're not going to be all judgy about it, they're like very willing to kind of share with you when they feel very safe. So I love that you're able to utilize that comfort zone in order to create a whole book. And you said that it's going really, really well, and it's selling and publishing well, right?
Yeah. So my fourth book, Secret Orlando, just came out, and that is the fourth book I've written for a publisher called Reedy Press. And this one I actually co-authored with a gentleman named John Brown, who's a TV personality out there. But this one has really, and I don't know if it's because I'm starting to maybe become something of a known quantity a little bit, or if it's just because Orlando is such a huge vacation market, or what it is. But this one, you know, after just a couple months, we've already gone into a second printing on this one. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. It's, I mean, you know, to me, it's kind of amazing because this all evolved from something I was doing as kind of a fun, you know, sort of personal, quirky side project. And every book is bringing me to within sight of a time when, you know, I might be able to really just do this all the time.
That's very cool. So I have a question for you. I didn't prepare for this at all, so it's probably not a very fair question. But like, can you say like what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen or the weirdest place you've ever been? Do you have an answer?
You know, again, I think it's how you define weird.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to know for you. Like, even it's like I feel like if you're like the authority of weirdness, and you have been to so many weird things. And like you said, you have to be careful not to get too desensitized to how weird it is. I'm wondering if you were ever at a place where you're like, okay, now this is really weird. Like, I just wondered if you had ever had that.
Yeah, you know what? For me, I think it's some of the curio shops. And there are some fantastic ones here in Tampa and in Florida in general. But I remember when I first moved here, I was exploring Ybor City, and I found a place called Dysfunctional Grace. And if you have not been there before, I mean, it is weird sort of taxidermy art and things that are very strange and unsettling. And I mean, you feel like you're browsing around in like, you know, like Robert Ripley's you know, basement or something where all of the things that he could never publicly display are available for your procurement. And now there's another place called Tiger Dust where I go to pretty at least once a month. I'm there the last Thursday of every month, and that's kind of a partnership with Dysfunctional Grace. But all over the state, there was a place called Old Ghosts of, I think it was Old Ghosts of Hollywood in Hollywood, Florida, is another one that's sort of like half curio shop, half tattoo parlor, and just a very cool, weird, quirky vibe.
Okay, no, wait. I'm sorry, I know you have a question, but like when you say curio shop, define that term. Like, what makes it a curio shop as opposed to just another antique store or something?
If If you're familiar with the idea of a Wunderkammer or a cabinet of curiosities, like the Victorians used to have these cabinets of curiosity where they would keep, a strange skull of something unidentified that they'd found in the woods, or different stones or rocks, or books on naturalist sort of things or spiritualist sort of things, curiosities, things that were just strange and had these amazing stories behind them. They would create these little cabinets for them. And so I define sort of a curio shop or an oddities shop as one in which, if you're looking for something to put in your personal Wunderkammer, that's the place you go.
And I love that you share it that way, because it's evolved over the years too about what is appropriate to be an oddity, because like medical things were oddity for a long time until we understood them a little bit more. But the dysfunctional grace being a perfect example. I used to do a ghost tour in Ybor City, and even though we had our script, we had where we were supposed to go to, I would always stop outside of dysfunctional grace and encourage my guests to look through the window at all the weird stuff that was in there. Because they would have everything from old prosthetic limbs, and then I'd be like, oh, and look, this week they have a new old casket. It was a little bit of everything. And you're exactly right. It was just every time was so strange.
Mm-hmm. And there's oddities and antiques in Clearwater, but I mean places where you might find wet or dry specimens and vials. I mean, things that may creep you out a little bit, things that may make you feel a little weird, and you're like, I don't really know how I feel about this thing even existing, let alone do I want to display this somewhere. Mm-hmm. For me, I love that stuff. I think it's just so interesting, and I could, browse places like that forever. So if there is anywhere in the state of Florida a Fiji mermaid, that I have not dragged my wife to go see, I don't know where it is.
And she's such a good sport to do that with you. What is her take on all of this? Is she is her weird working better than when you maybe first started this?
Well, I mean, she has been tremendously accepting of this, because, I mean, look, I was never what I would call sort of normal, but I feel like I have been getting progressively weirder, and she's okay with that.
Yeah, she's along for the ride with you too.
Yeah, she's like, you know what? It keeps things interesting.
I can identify. But moving on.
I felt that. Yes. You were going to ask something?
No, I just wanted to move on.
Oh, okay. Well, one more thing to add to that thought. Weird isn't necessarily a collectible. One of the favorite things that you have in your Secret Tampa Bay book, and it's on the cover, is the Chicken Church, which, I used to live not too far from. And it cracks me up. It would crack me up every time I would see it, because it's just this church in, I think it's St. Pete or St. Pete Beach, that happens to look like a chicken, and it was completely accidental.
Yeah, the church by the sea. And I mean, you cannot miss it. And when you see it, you're just like, this looks like a chicken. There's no denying it.
Well, so do they own up to that? Do they admit that it looks like a chicken, or is that insulting so that they decided to be above it?
So I had heard that they don't love being called the Chicken Church. So I did not refer to them as that in the book, but I couldn't resist making some chicken related puns, because that's just where my brain goes.
Yeah, I mean, as they say, you can't unsee it. Once you see it, it's like, oh yes, that's a chicken.
And I mean, certainly I don't want to run afoul of them. But sorry, but I do try to be respectful, and that's another thing, which is there aren't a lot of places that I think are really truly blow you away magical, and so I'm always sort of torn. Do I want to share this? Because the minute I tell folks about it, our people going to go there? Is it going to become less magical? And there are a couple places that I found throughout the state of Florida that did ask me not to write about them, and I always respect that because you know what? There's a value in experiencing some things that you can't really share with folks. You know, there's a magic that should be, you know, it should be up to the place if they want it to really be known. Oh, I think you guys are on mute.
We are. There we go. I was saying when you stumble onto something that nobody else has discovered or very few people know about, it does make it even more amazing, you know, in a certain regard. So I can completely understand that. And I also think that, you know, we're talking about what makes something weird with author Joshua Ginsberg here. And I think weird doesn't have the same connotation that it used to have. Weird used to be an insult. And I think there's this whole community that embraces its weirdness, which is amazing. And now we're a part of that community.
Yeah. And what's amazing, I mean, all of the things that, you know, kind of made me a bit of an awkward sort of loner or an outsider as a kid. Like today, those things are totally popular, right? Like collecting Marvel comic books or playing role-playing games or video games or all that. I mean, like today, it's like, that's not weird. That's like just completely acceptable. But, you know, the other thing I would say is that reminded me that there's yet another way to sort of think about what is weird or how you find something that is weird, right? There's a different way to kind of categorize those. Are those things that are sort of very obviously unique, like the Chicken Church is a great example, or Dysfunctional Grace. I mean, once you're in there, you know that you are in a place that is wondrous and kind of unique. And then there are the places you just like walk past every day, like Morris Sound Recording Studio. People don't realize it's this old bank building in Seminole Heights, I think, with a little blue door. And that is really where death metal was kind of born in part. But I mean, it's the sort of thing. So that's the other side of it, is stuff that you might walk past every day and never realize that there's some sort of like strange story or history to it.
And I like you said that because history can be really weird. And I love reading about weird history. And it's everywhere if you find the right people to talk to and get your sources right, which you're great at doing.
Thank you. Yeah. And I would say we are in the right place for weird history.
Yeah, Florida, like you said.
I mean, you like every day I learn about things that I just think that can't possibly be true. And then I ask around and people are like, oh yeah, that really happened. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And again, it goes back to people being comfortable with you to share those stories and to talk about and kind of reclaiming weird.
Well, it reminds me of even like the paranormal stuff. When you were doing all the research for the Oldsmar Ghost Tour, that's right 5 minutes from where the Phantom History House is, like these people were telling stories of very weird things that happened in their home, and they're willing to share it. But, you know, like it's sort of like, well, I think that's really unusual. That probably, but you know what I mean? Like it's right there. It's in the paranormal world sort of by default too.
Yeah. You know, I think every aspect of our lives has a weird component if you know where to look. You know, and you have to find that, and that's something that we've kind of tried to thrive in this past year or more in Phantom History House. And you know, you adjusting to having me in your life is weird. So you know, you got we're working through that too.
Right. And the more you look, the more you find.
Yes.
That's been a big part of this journey, is that, you know, for me, it was really kind of a paradigm shift. When I was living in Chicago and my wife and I decided that we wanted to leave and we'd settled on Tampa, you know, we compiled this list of things you can only do in Chicago. And I started finding all these amazing resources like Secret Chicago, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure, or the website Atlas Obscura, which I became, like a diehard super fan of, or Roadside America, or all these places. And then what happened was, by the time we got to Florida, I wasn't just using a lot of these resources, I was kind of actively submitting to them. And that ultimately put me on the path to connecting with Reedy Press and saying, hey, I see you don't have this Secret Tampa Bay, but you've got a whole series. Do you want something like that? And they said, absolutely. So
I love that you're talking about the idea of what you start to notice. I think that's sort of like one of those cool phenomenons about life. It's sort of like when you buy a red car and then you realize how many red cars are on the road. Like you have a Jeep.
Right.
Now I notice Jeeps all the time. And I'm like, well, I never noticed all these Jeeps everywhere. So it's sort of like what you're paying attention to. And I love that you're talking about that because you'll find more weird or unusual things if you're really paying attention. Most people just sort of go through their life and they don't really pay attention much to what's going on around them.
Well, and I think of that as what I sometimes refer to as almost the metaphysics of storytelling, right? Because let's say, I've used this example before, but let's say you go for a walk around your neighborhood every day, and there's a manhole cover in the middle of the road, and manhole covers just aren't very exciting. They're like, flat circular discs of metal. But now if I were to tell you that particular metal disc was melted down from one of Edward Teach or Blackbeard's cannons, then all of a sudden that totally changes the experience. And like every time you walk by it, some part of your brain is going, yar,
Right.
But even though nothing has physically changed as a result of what you know about it, your experience of that has changed. And so an entire book of those, I guess you could look at, is that a travel guide to the weird and wonderful? Or is it something different? Is it maybe kind of a modern grimoire in that sense?
Well, I'll have to say, we had a big holiday party here this past year. You were here for part of that too, and I purchased a couple of your books to give as gifts to some people, and it was exactly that, like a travel guide. That like when we come back, we want to go to this weird place in Josh's book. So I do see people using that, and that's something I plan to do as well. Same with the Haunted Orlando book. I want to get my hands on that, and it's a great resource to use for future podcasts and things like that.
And we're always looking for places to go that are a little bit weird and creepy. So
yeah.
And so so I've been really, really lucky that Reedy has let me kind of pursue all this stuff, and they've been asking me to write these. But after Secret Tampa Bay came out, we put that out in like 2020, which was kind of an auspicious time to put out a travel guide.
Right.
So,
not travel.
Yeah, nobody can travel all of a sudden. So I started trying to get real clever and think of ways that I could get people to check out some of these places safely or from outside, or doing social distance. So they had me create a giant scavenger hunt. So I went very like J.R.R. Tolkien, and I created 361 rhyming riddles based partially on that book and partially on the next book, which was Oldest Tampa Bay. And I tried to kind of gamify it. And, it's more of an activity book, but Tampa Bay Scavenger was really near and dear to my heart because it just gave me yet another way of looking at the place I live, not just as being populated with these curiosities, but almost as like a game board, or as a sort of like Tampa as the setting for some sort of like RPG campaign, right?
Right.
And so each of these books I write, I feel like I'm looking at the place I live through a different facet in a crystal. And it's always kind of showing me something I didn't expect or even know existed.
Yeah, I think every location has its like iconic what it is. Before you live in Florida, it's theme parks and it's beaches. There's nothing else, but there's so
Right.
much more here. I'm originally from St. Louis. It's the Cardinals and it's the Arch, but there's so
Mhm.
much more there. And you're really good at getting that underbelly, again, using that term of what's around. Now, I do know, before we wrap up, that you have an opportunity coming up for locals here who can actually say hello to you on I think this weekend up in Pasco County.
Yes. So this weekend I will be at the Barnes and Noble in Wesley Chapel at the Wiregrass stores, and I'll be there from 2 o'clock until whenever people get tired of me, probably about 5. So I know people might have some plans this weekend, but before the game, if you want to come out and see me, I would love to see anybody that wants to come out.
I love it. I love it. And listen, everybody, don't forget that we are in Phantom History House is in Secret Tampa Bay, page 146. You can see it writes all about us. He added some pictures. So Josh, I want to say thank you again for including us in all of that.
Well, no problem. Thank you guys for being part of what makes Tampa weird, wonderful, and obscure.
That's awesome.
We love being part of that. And if people want to learn more about you, I know you're on all social media platforms. Your books are also available on Amazon, I believe. Is that the best place to get them?
Amazon, lots of the independent bookstores, Portkey, the Gilded Page. And then, of course, if people want signed copies, they can always just go to secrettampabay.com and get them there. And before I go, I know you mentioned Tiffany Fitzpatrick's going to be back. I wanted to give her a plug because she gave me my very first reading this past year, and she was fantastic. So I would totally encourage people to come see her while she's there.
I love that. Thanks for mentioning that. And I'm glad it was a good first experience.
Yeah, she's really incredible. And when we met her, we were both kind of wowed by her. We met her at a Paranormal Day event up in Indianapolis. So I'm so glad you got to experience her talents and get a chance to talk to her. And everybody, she will be back here on the 16th and 17th of February, doing her group event on that Friday night, and of course, individual readings on that Saturday. And you can book directly with her at phantomhistory.com/events. So you can actually select the time frame that you want to talk to her.
Yeah, and go to that events tab at our website, and you can see all of the stuff that's happening, all the ghost tours that are scheduled, ghost tours by the fire, special events, lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, we're staying busy. We are fully into 2024. Both feet are in, and we are looking forward to what's coming up next with the expos and things. And it gives us a great opportunity to meet great people like Joshua, like we did last year. And Joshua, we're so thankful for you taking the time to talk to us, including us in your book, and just kind of being in our world and our circle now. We're so fortunate to see you out and about now.
Thank you so much for having me. And I was also really excited that you folks have been able to connect so well with the Horror Writers Association. And I'm starting to gradually move more and more into writing fiction. So those have been some really fun and impressive folks, really inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. I've loved meeting them and having some conversations with them. And they've been on some of our Conjuring Phantom History episodes talking about books with me. So it's been a lot of fun to meet all of them as well. So I'm glad you mentioned them.
Yeah, they're fantastic. We love having them here too. And of course, come see us anytime, Joshua. You're always welcome. We love to have you here at Phantom History House or at one of our events. And if you are available this weekend before whatever that sporting event is on Sunday, go by Pasco County. What is the name of the mall again?
It's the Wiregrass, the stores at Wiregrass.
Stores at Wiregrass in Pasco County, and find Joshua and get a signed copy of several of his books. He'll be there.
Thank you for talking with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
All right. Love and weirdness, guys.
Absolutely. Same to you. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.